Thank you very much, Sandy, for that presentation. And it's really an honor to be here, truly, to see such a congruent approach. It's unbelievable to be in a presentation where I wanted to say yes, yes, to every single word that was said by the speaker, by everyone in the room. Just the approach, the relational approach, the understanding of the subject, and the really heartfelt responses. I could connect to the people that responded, and there's so much the heart of what we do also in the other part of the world. And it's such a beautiful experience to be able to be part of this network. I was talking to someone a bit earlier about how important it is in the work with suicide, in whatever we do in the work with suicide, to come into connection, right? To come into a sense of belonging, into a sense of community. Also for us as practitioners, it's so important because it can be an isolating work, and also for anyone experiencing any sort of suicidal distress, because that in itself is a great expression of isolation and disconnection. So it's so beautiful also that this is part of this, it's under the umbrella of this beautiful organization that's called Connecting, because everything at the heart of working with any emotional distress is about connecting. And today I'm going to speak a little bit about the functionality. What can we learn also from the suicidal thoughts, because they can be, and they are usually, a treasure to be explored. We can think of it as a treasure to be explored rather than a problem that we need to fix or to solve or to turn away from, or to teach someone how to distract themselves from that part in them. And it was beautiful that when I said a treasure to be explored, I saw some surprised glances in the audience. And it's absolutely true, because if we can connect, we until now it was spoken absolutely about non-judgment and acceptance and openness, and also building on that, how is it if we go deeper and we look with curiosity, with authentic, deep curiosity at what is this trying to tell us? And I'm going to build up on the response from earlier about the choice to walk away from, I don't like a movie, you said, right? And then I have the choice to walk away. And suicide absolutely can be seen as the choice to walk away from life. But actually, if we look deeper, what are we walking away from? What in my life is not working at all, that it's not possible for me to live like this anymore? And this is always very useful, that we can, when someone says, I cannot live anymore, or I don't want to live anymore, if we can hear, I can't live like this anymore. So what does that like this hold? And many times I say, and I consider some of my clients, I want to say that, are telling me, but you seem almost excited when I share that I have suicidal thoughts. And I say, yes, actually, yes, I'm excited. I'm excited because this is an amazing guide towards what in your life is not so authentic or not so aligned with your heart, with who you are, with your essence. And there are so many people that might be living in chronic depression, right? In a life that is lived halfway or even less than that, but they can live. It's bearable, right? And they go to the end of their life having lived, and at the end they might say, I would have wanted to live differently, or to live so much more. And that can be the treasure to be explored in the suicidal crisis, in the suicidal part, because there is that moment that will push you to the edge. And from that moment, if we're willing to learn from it, it can be that transformational crisis that puts our life in alignment, and it makes it truly worth living. So that's why I'm excited, absolutely. When a client would say that, that's why it's my greatest pleasure, honestly, and honor. I always say it's a privilege to work with people who are on that edge and to be able to speak about suicide. So I'm coming from the compassionate inquiry approach and from the school of Gabor Mate, so it's very much everything I'm saying, but also everything that I heard until now is very much based on the same principles of openness, of curiosity, of compassion. But when we say curiosity as practitioners, and when I say practitioner, it can be any helping profession. It doesn't need to be psychotherapy. Many times for a suicidal person, the first support is an emergency service maybe, or even a friend, or a social worker, or a teacher. Any of us can be support persons and might be the first person that will encounter that for the one in suicidal distress. Now, we need to remember that a person in suicidal distress is in their most vulnerable and also most authentic side. For those of you who maybe already had contact with that, either maybe in yourselves or in someone that you supported, you saw that right from that place we have nothing more to lose. So we are deeply authentic. The masks are falling. The wounds are there, the beliefs are there, and we are bare naked, right? So when that person is truly authentic, how is it if we can get into this field of resonance and also ourselves be truly authentic? And that's really easy to say and hard to do as practitioners. Because the discussion until now was also, what do we think we need to do? And you see, I use the word, especially the word, I need to do. What do I have to do if someone discloses that they're suicidal? If I ask my client, if I ask my friend, then what do I do? And it's a natural human response. It's the beauty of our problem-solving mind that wants to fix. It's a big problem, let's fix it. Let's make you live. And it's a beautiful and honorable agenda, but it's an agenda. It's what I want for you. It's not what you want. And in that moment, I come as a practitioner, as a support person, I come in the space and I take your space. And this is really a subtle change of perspective. Because again, it's absolutely honorable and that's what we want. If anybody would ask me, what do you want for your clients? Of course, I want them to live, but I want them to want to live, to really commit to that. And I cannot do that for anyone. So in that place, it's about what I was saying about our own authenticity. And what does that mean? It's exactly as Sandy was saying, it's not about being empty and having no reaction in front of it. We are human. We will have reactions. We will have our own perceptions of risk, because I'll be talking a bit later about risk assessment. And the valuable question is to ask myself, how comfortable am I with risk as a human being? How is my view upon death? Am I afraid of death for myself, actually, somewhere deep inside? Then that is something that I will project onto the other person, and I will try to save them from my own fear. It might not be their own fear. So that is the true curiosity, and the true authenticity is when I take a step back. A great teacher from the IFS, the internal family systems, is saying, with working with suicide, he's saying, actually, all you need to do is take yourself out of the space. Just let that person be. Take yourself there. You don't need to do anything. And Gabor Mate is talking very much as practitioners that we want maybe to move away from who am I in the space with this suicidal person. Not who am I, but how am I showing up? What is the nature of my presence? That's all. Not what is my identity. I am the fixer. I am the therapist. I am the healer. I am the support person. Whatever I think I have to do. It's not about doing, it's about the state of being. And exactly as you already played a bit with, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, in this exercise that you did, which was all about presence, right? And it was all about knowing and being aware of what is inside of me. Because as I was saying, we will not be empty in front of another person. We will, and we'll explore a bit later that in an exercise. Who do I think I need to be? What's showing up for me? What is my experience? It's okay if I have fear. It's okay if I have a client and they're disclosing that and my breath stops for a second. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not a bad therapist. It's just about bringing that mindful attention to that and being able to connect with that person from that gasp where I am and coming back and listening to them. So if we're talking about safety, actually what we've seen is that most of the let's say safety measures that are being done, I would say in general, this is such a different space. But in practice, worldwide, usually in clinical practice, it's still very much implemented this reactionary based approach, fear based approach. So if someone will disclose suicidal distress, they will be met with safety protocols, maybe sometimes even the safety contracts, which are in some way a bit hilarious, to be honest, because they are asking you to sign that you will not take your life. It's actually still being used in psychiatric hospitals in UK. So it's amazing that this is really done still. And it's not to judge anyone that does that. It's just to see with the same curiosity, why do we need to do that? Why do we need to ask someone to sign that they will not be here anymore? They want to not be here anymore tomorrow. So if I come as a practitioner with safety plans, before that person is agreeing to have a safety plan, then who am I actually protecting in the space? Myself. It's not about the other person. It's about my own fear. It's about my own issues, maybe of liability. Maybe I don't want to, of course, it's the greatest fear of a therapist, maybe of a human being, as you're exploring also the fear of that, what's showing up for me. But the attention is on me. Because if a person has that deep vulnerability and safety with us to tell us, hey, I'm thinking of taking my life, I cannot do this anymore. And we meet them with, oh, I will give you some possibilities not to do this, and we do, and we go for a walk and we do this. Then what I'm coming with in the space is actually a power dynamic, a power disbalance. Me as that practitioner is coming in the space and telling you that what you want and you feel is best for you is wrong. And that I will give you options and ultimately I will save you. So that's what we don't want to do. And that's why a lot of the safety protocols are not working. And the first people that are saying that actually are the emergency service people that are seeing the same cases, and they're the first line responders. And they will say they had all the plans. We're asking them. They had all the plans. They had all the protocols. It didn't work. Why? Because the person was not on board with using them. We can give them this much of protocols and tools, and most suicide prevention trainings are based on that. Are 1 day or 2 days of tools, and of course the tools are important, but only afterwards, after I can establish that deep safety and connection with the person, and to really be sure that they also want to commit to those plans. And then we are co-creating. I'm always talking about the safety in this space is not a creation. I will create your safety. It's that we are co-creating this safety. You are creating the safety. And also I use this in the work with suicide. Gabor Mate, maybe you know, who is a great expert on addictions and trauma, right? And he's talking about the opposite of addictions is connection. And he changed the view on addictions so much in the last decades, from those rehabilitation programs where the addict was met with what's wrong with you, I'm going to fix you. I'm going to give you all these substitutes. And he shifted towards what happened to you, not what's wrong, but why the pain and how do I meet you there? And then he says that the remedy, the medicine to addiction is not another substance, it's not a program, it's connection. And that's what we can say, that's my belief, that we can say the opposite of suicide, as I was saying in the beginning, is just bringing ourselves back in that connection. And talking also from a personal space, because for me it's always so interesting and in some way ironic that I'm talking so much about risk assessments and what safety means. And I'm coming in this work from a personal place. I got the education later, but 15 years ago, I was someone struggling on a daily basis, chronic suicidal ideation, while already having a good career. I was very high functioning, I was very successful, I had kids, and still that was going on every day. And I was having a therapist, a great therapist. He's very famous in my country. He did nothing wrong, and he never knew any of it. I never said anything. And then I had an attempt, and the therapist felt so bad that he said, but I could have helped you with all these tools that I have. But we never got to that. He never knew anything. Because somehow in our relation, in the therapeutic space, the safety was not there for me to actually disclose that. From there, he could have helped, but that's what we want to create. The true safety is not, it's that connection. It's not the absence of threat. It's the presence of connection. So the threat will be there. The pain for the person will be there. We don't want to try to fix the pain. The threat, what's happening in their lives, the stressors in their lives will still be there. But the safety does not come from the absence of those stressors. It comes from being supported, feeling yourself supported, right? Now, I'm very curious, just building up on the first part and a bit on what we touched upon now. If we can all open a bit of conversation and really explore, I guess many of you were already in contact with people experiencing suicidal distress. And if not, for those of you who have not, just you can imagine that space, right? That's why we're here. So if you imagine, or if you recall a moment when a person told you that they want to take their own lives, and breathing as you listen, as you did a bit earlier, grounding in yourself, breathing deeply. Just notice what shows up in your body. We're looking at body, felt sense. What is coming up? We can look then at emotions. What emotion comes with that body sensation? And anyone who wants to share, please do. Yeah.
Heaviness on the chest.
Yeah, heaviness on the chest. Okay.
Emotion I couldn't figure out. It was numbness.
Aha, emotion was numbness. Okay, okay. Numbness is also a physical experience. It's cutting us off from something. And beautiful, as you said, emotion, I couldn't feel it, right? It was the numbness. Yeah.
I've experienced someone acknowledging that they wanted to commit suicide. And I recall the sense of panic and anxiety that I had
Yeah.
at that point of time, not knowing how to deal with it.
Yeah. So panic, panicking.
That I felt.
Yeah, that you felt. And if you can recall that, how did that show up in your body?
So I felt that I developed palpitations.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized my palms were sweaty.
Yeah.
And my legs were trembling.
Yeah, right. So heart palpitation, sweat in the hands,
So
and legs.
I felt very anxious that night.
Yeah.
I was much younger, but that was the sensation I remember.
Absolutely. It's not about age. Thank you for that. Yeah. So shaking legs. You see how intense our physical experience is in that moment. Yeah, let's see if there are other experiences. Yeah. In the neck, what, a constriction?
No, it's like breathing, like a heartbeat.
A heartbeat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, the heartbeat in the neck. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I heard something like that,
Yeah.
I just felt blank and hollow.
Blank and hollow.
I I I I heard it with my ears, but then I couldn't feel any of the senses. It was just blank and hollow.
Uh-huh. Blank and hollow. And how was that for you to hold hollowness and blank inside of you?
At that moment, I felt I was lost myself,
Lost myself. Okay.
and I don't think I wanted to calculate any further.
Yeah.
But that was a thought that, like, I don't know what will happen. As in, how can I even imagine this? It is unimaginable.
Aha. So such a strong disbelief, right? I'm imagining this. It's not real, right?
No, I cannot imagine if that sentence comes
you
true.
cannot
I
imagine.
cannot. It is unbelievable or unimaginable.
Uh-huh. So it's so big that it's unbelievable, it's unimaginable. But that sense of hollow and losing yourself. Yeah. So let's hear that. Thank you. How that feels in our body to connect to I lost myself. There's nothing. It's hollow. I cannot even imagine or believe. Look how big it is. Our own experience, and that's perfectly right and perfectly valid. But how can we then be in the space with someone in having this extremely intense experience? Heart palpitations, lost, panic, legs shaking, absolutely, hands sweating. And then we are required by some thought or by society or by our regulating body or whatever it is to, and now do something from that state. So that will not be the organic need of that person. We will not be open and flexible to feel that person, but we will be in a contracted state. Yeah.
It feels like that we are mirroring them and not reflecting them.
Yeah.
It feels to me like that.
Yeah, it can be that we are mirroring their experience, or sometimes we are even feeling the experience that they are cut off from. It can be also that in therapy, it can work like that. But still, it's in that second, it's my experience, right? So it's not about in myself making it go away, but bringing that mindfulness attention of, this is happening to me. I'm in panic. I lost myself. And let's see that's a perception. I'm still there. I didn't lose, but of course, the perception is I lost myself. And now going to the last step, which in what we do is the most important. So we looked at what is the physical, what is the emotion, what is our belief. And it can be a belief about myself or a belief about the other person. So they're experiencing suicidal thoughts. Who do I think I need to be? What do I believe of myself then? Can you connect to that? Or what do I rescue? I heard. Yeah, a rescuer. Yeah, what else? Savior. Okay. What goes on in your head? Let's see, what goes on?
Hello.
Hmm?
Yeah. Actually, if some person expresses that they want to commit suicide, I don't have experience as a therapist or counselor, but like say in any other informal discussions with anyone, I will feel bad that the person is going through that much pain.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, I will have some kind of relief that they are expressing that. So most likely they are not going to commit suicide because they express. The one who actually commits suicide is, as per my understanding,
Yeah.
very unlikely to express that they want to commit suicide.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's that sense of ambivalence that Sandy was talking about. They're talking about it, so it seems that you're a bit more comfortable with that scenario that at least they're saying. So you're connecting to their wish to live part. Yeah, great. Yeah.
I think that if they commit suicide, it's going to be my fault.
My fault, exactly. If we're honest, there is that part inside of us that will say, what if this is my fault? What if that means I'm not a good enough therapist? I could have done better. I conduct this training for, we're not calling it suicide prevention, but we're calling it suicide attention. It's international for helping professions. And there are so many that are saying this, exactly this, when they had an experience or imagining that experience, that the first thing they would say, I don't know if I can, they go in a freeze. Maybe I wasn't good enough, everything that I knew, but it's making it about me. From the best place possible, it's not about selfishness, but I'm making it about me. And so from that point, how easy is it for me to really get curious? That's where we started from curiosity. It's really hard to be curious if I'm constricted in my body, if I'm in panic, if I believe I need to save that person, or if that it's my fault, it's all on me. Very difficult to be open and curious, right? So if we can work with ourselves in that, in letting go of these beliefs and respecting deeply the client's, the person's process, seeing, wow, okay, so this treasure to be explored, what is it telling us? What might not be working? What do you have in your life that is too less or too much? Suicide is always about that. There's either too much going on in my life or not enough. Maybe I don't have connection. Maybe I don't have spiritual connection or connection to self, or I'm isolated, or maybe I have way too many roles in my life and I have to do too many things. So there we can work, and many times the suicidal crisis becomes, as I was saying, what enhances the quality of life further on. And in the work with suicide, that's the most important step. And what's being done in practice and in risk assessments and risk management is usually just avoiding a temporary crisis, the immediate crisis. But it's not enhancing the quality of life long term, so that we can make suicide unnecessary long term for a person. That's what we want, right? Because we can keep them safe today, tomorrow we can tie them up to a bed in a hospital. That's widely done. But how long do we keep that person? And then we lose them long term, right? So let me see now how much time. Yes, we have a bit of time. And yeah, if you can project I want to walk through, yeah. So this is a clinical tool that we use and that we created in this training, but I wanted to offer it as just as possibilities. You can take from here whatever really calls to you or inspires you or resonates with you in possibilities of asking, of inquiring with your clients. And this is something that I don't hand to my clients, because I don't like so much this idea of giving a homework. Now that person disclosed this raw point inside of them, and I give the paper and say, yeah, there are some, fill in some responses there. But you can just think about some of these questions and explorations and really offer them to the person in that moment. And the first disclaimer is about what we found also in the standard assessment forms for suicidal risk. There are a lot of questions, for example, for people who experienced already, who had suicide attempts. There are questions which ask, how was that attempt? What did you do? And so on, so many details about that. And just being aware that that can be highly triggering. So when we want to talk with a person, we don't want to go into the details, but we want to go into the felt sense. What were you trying to do, to achieve for yourself? We're turning it into this story of resilience, which is true, a survival. and the deep, deep courage of that person to have broken some loop in which they were. And we're not interested in what was your means, how did you do it, and other such details. So just being aware also of that. And what we want to do in the safety is just to be sure at first, before journeying into anything, that that person, just as we feel, is stable enough to journey also. That's another, I would really go into saying a mistake in a lot of practices, is that we are not ensuring that the person is really stable in that moment, and are coming in with details, with questions that might be overwhelming for that person in that moment. And then if we're therapists, for example, let's remember that we have the clients today in the session, and then we don't see them for a whole week. So my focus primarily is not on what do we do in this session today, but on how are you for a whole week after? What am I leaving you with? Yeah. So here you can play with these. Of course, we want to check if they disclosed already in a previous session. We want to follow up on that. When a person told us in any way, in any language, that they feel they cannot go on anymore, that curiosity and that connection comes also from not asking formally, do you have currently suicidal thoughts? But how is that for you? I remember you said that, so I'm curious. How do you feel around that now? How did that grow in you? Is it the same? But just really bringing that discussion and that willingness to know authentically. I'm curious how this fluctuates, because let's remember that also the suicidal experience is a wave, right? It fluctuates. And the person's perception is that it's always, and let's hear the word, always like this. That's why the perceptions, there is no way out, I'm trapped, it's always like this. It's not always. So we want to bring that attention. This morning I felt a bit better, but now I'm again there. Okay, so there was a wave, maybe, yeah. We did introduce, I'm not personally very fond on the scale. This is in the risk assessments, but also from my experience, I know I would have never been able to give a grade to my suicidality. It's 7 today. Yesterday was 4. I wouldn't say that's, but why it can be interesting sometimes is if the person is already a bit more distanced from their experience, maybe we worked a bit with them and they're stable, then that can bring a little bit of prefrontal cortex, a bit of attention online, and say, yeah, actually, today it's a 6 and yesterday it was way more. Yeah, but it's still in the discussion around this wave, in helping the person see that it's not always like this. Because if we let someone believe, and we believe also that it's always like this, then the best solution is suicide, actually, if it doesn't change. Even in ourselves, if we have chronic pain, for example, or broken leg, if the pain is as sharp all the time, no rest, then any sane person would want to escape it, right? This is an interesting possible exploration that is not really very frequent and very common. How do your suicidal thoughts emerge? And that's another point where we can bring that curiosity, because they're very different, and people will say, will disclose in one language or the other that they're having suicidal thoughts, but many times even they cannot really describe how do they come. And for some people, they might be, for example, intrusive, violent images. They might say, I'm seeing myself do this, and really violently. But that, for example, is usually not really an indicator of a very high risk. But it's being taken in practice as high risk, especially in psychiatric practice in general. And that means that that person is really impulsive or can have a high risk. But there is such a thing, and it's really common, as suicidal OCD. Yeah, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. So the fixation of the mind. At one point it worked in giving me relief. This is many times part of the chronic suicidal ideation, right? And in risk assessment, let's say, We want to see if that person is in active plan. Do they have means? Do they have a time frame? I want to do it tomorrow with these pills in this way, then that's a risk. Yes, high risk. But if it's passive, I've been feeling like this for years, or they come, these images, and then we can ask, okay, and how do you feel when they come? And usually the response is, at first I'm scared of them, but actually I feel relieved afterwards because they bring a feeling of relief. For example, I have a client that has a fantasy of their own funeral, and they're a really high achieving professional that has a lot of things on their plate. And how they deal with that is that before something that is very stressful, they close their eyes and they imagine their funeral. Such an interesting experience. And when I asked that, okay, so tell me more, that's really fascinating. What does that do for you? They say, okay, I imagine myself resting, first of all. I'm done with the work. And then they say, and all my loved ones are around me. I see all my friends, and I never get to see them anymore because I'm so busy. So he imagines how he sees his childhood friends, all the friends, everybody he didn't get to see, that are connected and are there with him and his family. So it brings him rest and connection. And then wonderful. Why not use it? Many times the suicidal ideation and suicidality as an experience is what keeps that person alive. This client of mine would not be here. He works it's like 3 lives in one. It's impossible. But this fantasy, for example, provides some relief. So from that point, we know when it comes, then it's too much for you. So what can we maybe make some space in your life so that it's bearable, right? That's why it can be such a guide. Or it can be, for example, impulsive need from the person. They might say, I really feel this. I really feel it in my arms, in my palms. I really want to do something to my body. That's a very different experience. And I would say that's a more high risk experience because actually their nervous system is very activated in that moment. It's an activation and it can come with an impulsive need to act on it, right? So we want to check, is it a felt sense? Does it come from this, oh, I cannot be in my body anymore. I need to escape my body. That's one experience. And the fact that I have brief images, it's something totally different. Or, and looking yourselves also at this possibility maybe of a time in your life, a moment where, for example, you crossed the street and it just happens that you didn't look right or left. I'm crossing the street. If a car comes, well, that's also, it's passive suicidality there. And why am I saying that? It's not so that we jump on it and do something, but so that we're interested. So how come you don't care anymore, actually, if you live or die? And that's where we want to go. What does that show? How often does it happen for you? And here, this is a screening that we might want to have, because if it increases in frequency, even with that suicidal OCD, for example, if it becomes 20, 30 times per day, and people have commonly these experiences, they might turn their head and they see the image. At a point, it can become too much. And then there's the need to just make it stop in some way. So we want to see if there's this kind of this escalation from time to time to a lot. We want to see, of course, that is a risk if they attempted suicide in the past. Why is it a risk? It means that they jumped from using it as a coping mechanism to actually believing its story and going that extra length. So we know something about that person and we want to check for that, right? And from here on, this is the interesting part. We're opening the discussion with the person around the functionality. Again, not what was wrong, but what was it trying to do for you? Did you, at the moment of the attempt, want to die? Now, in my experience, when I ask this question, people are completely flabbergasted and they say, of course I wanted to die. That's why attempted. And when we go deeper, did you want to die? Or was a part of your experience wanting to go away? It was a part of your life that wanted to die and to make space. Many times we know it as a helping profession, that people don't really want to die, but they don't. Most of the people believe the story of the suicide, and many times they perceive that they're living with an internal enemy, that there is this in me, and that's why they're not sharing. I know that in my life then, that's why I was not sharing with my therapist. Again, there was nothing wrong with him, but I was having so much shame and perceiving that I'm living with an internal destructor and enemy that wants to do something, wants to kill me. And that was very hard to disclose. Whereas if the discussion would have been, this is a valuable part, this is an ingenious mechanism, this is a teacher for us that is guiding us somewhere, then from there, at that point, the experience could have been integrated. So that's what we want to explore with the people in front of us. I'm not going to go through all of because it's more of an extensive, let's say, list, but you can also see if what calls more, what you find more valuable, let's say, as an exploration. We want to see how, if there is a person that had an attempt, how that was handled again. Because the amount of shame and isolation that they live with, if they were met in a very reactionary way, is in itself a big risk factor, because they will not disclose again. So if a person disclosed and they were handled to the family, and the family was hyper vigilant, again, I was talking yesterday with some people and about this practice of families, of course, being very scared then if the family member has these thoughts and we're locking them up. I have a client who was in a hospital in the US, and the hospital told their mother, remove all the doors from your house so that you make sure that she doesn't cut herself in her room. Remove the doors. So these are the safety measures that are many times offered to people. Or families, of course, families are not educated in trauma work, in therapy, and they shouldn't be. It's not their, right? And they're very hypervigilant. And that is a risk factor for the person. Or if they were met with, why did you want to do this to yourself? This is, again, it happens when the ambulance comes, for example. What did you do? That first question, what did you do, is an imprint for that person. I did something wrong. There's something wrong with me. I will keep this to myself. And actually, the biggest risk factor with suicide is silence. That's it. It's that simple. If people talk, then there is safety. If we talk about risk assessments, for example, a very interesting statistic, I don't like usually but statistics, but this one is really important, is that 95% of the people who died by suicide were assessed as low risk. And that 80% of the people that are assessed as high risk, let me see, 85 die by suicide, do not die by suicide, that are assessed as high risk. So these are statistics from the American Psychologists Association and psychiatrists. They don't work. That's the truth. They don't work. Because actually the biggest safety is getting the person to share. And we need to be aware of what was the history, especially when someone had suicidal thoughts for a longer time, or since they were a teenager maybe. That is a very frequent experience in the hormonal changes in teens. And then if the mother, the father was making them wrong and vigilant or reacting badly, that is something that they carry their entire life. And that person might have a suicidal attempt at 45 that was actually very much fed by the way they were handled all their life after that moment. So that's what we want to unravel and we want to integrate. We want to practically reframe that isolating experience that they had in a way that brings them back into connection and into honoring their experience. Here we go to, did you feel safe to disclose with anyone? That's another indicator. Do you have a friend maybe that you talk to about this? Did you ever talk to a friend? If not, that shows us a lot of stigma and shame. Yeah, and here we can go into seeing how long does the ideation go back? When did it first appear? And here we can help the person see, when did it first appear? They might say, I don't know, I have it forever. Let's journey back when you were 10. Can you tell me something from then? Was this happening? No. Okay, let's go. And maybe then they see that I was 14 and I was bullied at school and this was the only way that I could cope. And we've got there the indicator, what is the suicidality doing for them? Because suicidality can have so many functions. It can be for some people freedom, a freedom that they never had, from pressures, from society, from family, from roles they have to fill. It's an escape. It can be a rebellion against the same pressures. I will show you, and we explored a bit earlier, what is the hopelessness, helplessness, and the answers were so diverse there, right? I will show you, or I will get revenge on myself, or I am worthless. My family will be better off without me. So many stories that are coming from beliefs. So that's what we want to unravel. What is the belief about yourself when you go into a suicidal crisis? That I'm trapped, that I'm a victim, that I cannot go out, or that I'm worthless, or that I'm bad. And that's what we want to see. What does it do for you? It's a very different functionality. We can get curious around the personal story around suicide. So how do you see someone who took their own life? Were they a winner? Was it a victory? Was it the one who got away? Were they weak? Were they selfish because they hurt their family? There are different stories. And we want to see what is the story there. Again, that creates the entire landscape of their suicidality, and that's what we want to work with. How do you feel towards that? Are you ashamed? I'm embarrassed about it. I'm ashamed that it comes, the suicidal thought. Or it's this friend that I don't talk to anyone about, but it really helps me and it brings me relief. Or it scares me terribly when it comes. It's such a different experience. And again, what we want to do there is create that dialogue between us, but mainly intrapersonal, in that person with their suicidal part. How is this dialogue inside? Can you get curious when it comes, instead of saying, oh my God, again, I want to take my life. What's wrong with me? Can we help them be, okay, I'm noticing this thought again, or this image. What might be happening for me right now? What's here right now? And that takes them to their essence, to their core. And that's where it becomes so valuable. It's almost like a chronic illness. And those of you who maybe, or chronic, an illness, a pain, maybe you know that sometimes that pain really guides us into what is not working for me right now. And that's suicidality. It's a chronic pain that stabs there when something is too much. And what do you hope will happen if you complete suicide? What is it that you're looking for? What will it do for you? And that's again the specific imprint. What I find, how I see it, is that suicidality for each person is like a fingerprint. It's unique. And it's being handled everywhere like it's the same experience for everyone. It's completely unique and it's completely personal, and it says everything about that person's life and story and beliefs and how they think of themselves. Yeah. Okay. How do I close from up? Yeah. Okay. So just making sure we are in time. Just also to allow if there are any questions around this, around what was said until now, or comments, or...
Do you think it helps if a person is saying they're suicidal? Does it help them to even
Yeah, so that,
Do you think it helps to sometimes when they're saying they're feeling suicidal for a very long time? Does it help if we ask them what would bring you out of this moment?
yeah.
Or can you think of a happy moment, a time, or anything? What we do generally at our suicide helplines is we try and ask them, what situation would you think you would be happy in?
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we try and get them out of that mind frame of suicidality
Yeah.
to moving to a frame of if X, Y, Z would happen in my life, I would be at a better space.
Yeah.
So asking, what I want to know is, if we ask these questions, do you think it helps them change what they're thinking?
Thank you so much for that question. It's very valuable. That's how I see it. And again, this is the way we approach it. That's a very valuable work to do, but it's the secondary step. So how does it look like for you when life is worth living? How is that? And we're bringing that quality in. Let's remember though that for some people there might be a point where they say, I don't want that. The voice, they're pleasing us. They don't want to feel better. They are pleasing us. Yeah, it can be. And this is again very common in practice. Yeah, thank you.
This is with reference to the anecdote you told us about a client who fantasizes about his funeral.
Yeah.
Could it also be the fact that he fantasizes because death is the permanency, and he feels that everything else can be handled with less amount of pressure and weight, because finally it won't matter. So I can take this well enough now because tomorrow it won't matter. So
Thank you so much for that offering. I did not explore that.
Okay.
So thank you for that. My client will be grateful.
Thank you.
I'm still working with this client. So beautiful, beautiful point of approach. And you see how beautiful that is, actually, that we all have all these, once we get curious, because this, what you offered now came from genuine curiosity towards that person. Could it be this for you? And you see, it was something that I didn't think of in those specific terms. And it could be, right? Thank you.
When a client is very suicidal in the moment,
Mhm.
is there any body work that you make them do, or is it only through words? Because sometimes they're not in the state to do any body work. Or
Yeah. Thank you. Very, very valuable, that point also. What I focus on in that moment is the synchronicity between us. So not necessarily asking the client, so, okay, let's breathe now. Because for some traumatized clients or people, that can be very distressing and re-triggering. You don't want to sit somewhere, someone tells you to do something and they're watching you. And we want to come into synchronicity. Synchronicity is the medicine. So synchronicity of the nervous system. So for example, we might say, okay, I feel the need to breathe a little bit. Would you like us to breathe together now? And really regulating myself as a practitioner, and then checking, okay, now that I feel settled, how is the space between us now? But putting the attention on our connection, the space between us, and not on you. Breathe now, calm down now. Yeah, we have all these grounding techniques, of course, if people are very activated, and they're very important. But it can be very valuable to offer them in doing together. Yeah, look, what helps me and I would like to do now, for example, is pressing my feet. I'm wondering how this is for you. I feel more settled. But modeling it myself and inviting them into connection if they want. Because they can be very disconnected from their body. And that will bring in more shame. I cannot even regulate. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
You mentioned about the contracting.
Yeah.
That we assign them that you will not take your life.
Yeah.
Even in Indian practice, it is verbal many times with the therapist that give the promise that you will not take your life whenever we are till when we are practicing it. So from you, it seems like it's not that effective, or it is not a good one. So what do you think will be effective, or what could be done instead of that? I think it will be give sense of support to them that I have promised them, or it is some kind of responsibility on them. What do you think your views on it?
There are so many approaches, and again, I want to make it clear I'm not making wrong any approach. And trust your gut feeling. It can be that, and I used this with the promise with 2 clients until now, although it's something that I don't teach, let's say. But my gut feeling said that the connection between us, that could be a good material for them. But in exploring what they make it mean if they give their promise, because otherwise it's something that I take on my back. Now I have to please you as the therapist also. And many times that's the trauma. That's what led to suicidality, that I pleased someone and I left myself aside, I lost myself. So now I cannot take my life because I'm going to disappoint the therapist. That doesn't sound like a life worth living. Yeah, it can help us in the moment. Maybe we won't lose a client, but it's not actually, right? So what I would go to would be, again, curiosity. Okay, and exploring some of these questions. These are the intake form for me. So this is what I will use in the first session that a person discloses suicidal thoughts. Either maybe it's the first session that we ever do together, or maybe we worked already for 6 months and now they feel safe and they say. Then I'm going to start feeling into some of these questions and asking what I feel is right for that person. But mainly turning it towards the functionality. What does it do for you? Can we welcome this experience? It says something. And as I say, that's the biggest safety factor. But again, if you feel in yourself, but not because a training said, that's what I would say, not what this training or any other training said. If we don't go into using our tools because the training said so. But yeah, if you feel that the connection is like that and you would be a really valuable resource for that person into this promise, then absolutely go for it. Yeah.
Sorry, one
I
question.
think we need to end. One more question. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, if there's someone who didn't, yeah.
I have one question, that when we do this risk assessment,
Yeah.
in that these few questions are there. Like, have you planned before? What kind of a planning you had?
Yeah.
So are we not inducing that thought, or are we not, of course, we do not intend to reinforce it, but it might happen that person has not thought of it and he might start feeling that, oh yes, I have not planned. So shall I? So whether, these questions, whether there is a risk of inducing those thoughts or consolidating those thoughts more.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, you're asking if there is a value in asking about if they have the means, if they thought of how to do it. Absolutely, there is. That's a very important question. We actually would be a responsibility for us to, once they disclose I can't do it anymore, and we can go further into asking. And once they say, yeah, I did think of taking my own life, then we should ask, okay, so did you think how to do it? So there we can have the what determines if there is an active plan or if there is a passive plan. But because, for example, we might have someone who starts stacking up on pills. It's a risk factor already. It's an active intent. It's a planned and something that they're doing. What I was saying is mostly about past attempts. So if a person discloses that they had past attempts, I would say my way to work with it, again, it's just mine, would be that I ask further along, not from the beginning, if that was planned and how it was done, because it can be very distressing for a person to go back into their memory. It can be something that activates their traumatic memory, right? We know there is the emotional flooding, and we go back to the same mind frame. If they're not resourced yet, it can be very triggering for someone to say, yes, I did it with benzos and I took 3, and I did this. It takes them back there. I hope this answers what you were asking. Yeah.
And if person is actually is having just fleeting thoughts of then this question will not trigger this thought that oh, if I am on a serious note, I should then plan for
Yeah, okay. Very good question. Thank you. I didn't understand it exactly. I would say no. It's a very good question to ask. No one will start getting closer to suicide because we ask anything. It's the same thing of the fear, what Sandy was talking about, the fear of asking. It's not like we're going to plan it in anybody's head. Nobody will take their life because they were asked if they thought about that. So they will not start stacking up on pills because someone asked if they have the means. Yeah. So absolutely, it's a really good and valuable question that we need to ask, actually. Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for the contributions and the dialogue. Thank you.